My name's Marie. Thank you for joining me in my first ever YouTube video. This is going to be an introductory video. I want to tell you a little bit about myself and what to expect. So I grew up in a very poor household. We lived in a council house. We didn't have heating for most of my life. I only got a bath once a week. I only got clean clothes once a week. My childhood was pretty bleak. But what was worse, because I was probably quite smelly and looked quite untidy, I ended up being like horrendously bullied for my whole of my childhood, the whole way through school, and it just crippled my confidence. I've ended up with dreadful social anxiety, which I've been working through my whole life. I've got into a good place now, but it's had ups and downs. So basically after school I had terrible confidence issues. I ended up working in pubs, and as someone who you know, didn't do very well at school because I was bullied so badly, I didn't really have any, you know, very good qualifications or anything. So I ended up in pubs until I was about 35. And I didn't really enjoy it. I got bullied again in a lot of the pubs I worked at. I worked with a really horrendous, abusive manager for many years. He used to scream at me in front of all the customers. Again, my whole confidence was, you know, destroyed. But when I was in my late 20s, a couple of the customers actually gave money towards my passport. I couldn't have afforded to get a passport before that. I was so poor. I lived above the pub. I couldn't escape the pub because basically I couldn't afford to pay rent, you know, out on the salary I was on. But having a passport, I finally managed to get on my first holiday, and I went to Italy, which I was excited about. I grew up watching things like Jim Henson's Storyteller, Greek Myths and things like this, Ray Harryhausen films, Clash of the Titans. So the classical world was something which was really exciting and I was really interested in as a child. So to finally get to Italy was incredible. I got to go to the Colosseum, I went to Pompeii. As someone who had never left England, it just opened my eyes. There was a whole world out there which I could explore. And when I got home, I didn't want to stop learning about history and archaeology, so I ended up enrolled in an open university degree in classics. And when I signed up, the customers in the pub were saying things like, "Classics, what will that get you? What's the point? Working in a pub doing a classics degree? What a waste of time." But you know, it wasn't just having the degree which got me out of pubs. When I finally had to leave the pub, I just finished my degree, and I ended up getting a job as a receptionist administrator at a school because the school teacher really liked the fact that I've done all this volunteering while I was doing my degree. I used to volunteer at the British Museum for 4.5 years doing object handling. I'd volunteered at some smaller museums doing various things, and it was all the extra work I'd done on top of the degree which was kind of I was inspired to do for my degree, which kind of got me out of the pubs. And while I was at the nursery school, I was there for about 1.5 years, 2 years. I ended up doing a lot of work in theatres as well. Now, another thing I used to love as a child was drama, the theatre, anything which could kind of take me out of my day-to-day life and how horrible things were. So I really loved theatre, and I decided to, I did an internship at a London theatre. I volunteered at some London theatres, and I just loved it. And I ended up applying to do some MAs in producing. I wasn't really sure what area of theatre to go into, but I knew I was going to organise and things, so I thought I'll give producing a try. Anyway, I was so excited when I got into an MA at one of the big drama schools. I thought, finally, you know, how amazing, I've accomplished something in my life. I'm going off to drama school. I was so excited, but when I got there, I was a lot older than the class. I was a lot bigger than everyone in the class. I was very overweight at the time, and basically they all decided they didn't like me. There was a group of girls in the class who would like avoid talking to me. They turned their backs when we were in a group, so I couldn't be involved. They just made me feel utterly worthless and useless. And I kind of went back to how I was as a child. I'd done so well working on my confidence in all the volunteering museums, and suddenly I was back to square one. I felt so depressed. I just felt like killing myself multiple times. It was horrendous. So I finally got to the end of this master's, feeling absolutely dreadful, and I started to produce theatre outside of that. I did lots of assistant producing, which I loved. I love working with creative people. I love the people I got to work with. That was wonderful, but it didn't bring me any money, and I ended up working for a temp agency, and I ended up working at a library where I'm still at now 6 years later, because the pandemic happened, and you know, we all kind of got stuck in places after the pandemic. And I got to the end of last year and I thought, is this it, Marie? You know, you're going to work every day, you can't progress, you don't want to progress here, you don't want to teach, which is what the assistant librarians do. Do you want to just be doing admin, which is, I'm an administrator in the library. So the end of last year, I stopped and I went, well, what interests me? And I've always loved film as well as theatre, but I went down the theatre route because, I don't know, that was what came to mind at first, and I got experience. It seemed an easier creative industry to get into. But I thought, I'm going to give film a go as well. And I mean, I might fail, but I think in life, sometimes you have to fail. You have to fail to figure out what you want to do. If it doesn't work, do you know what? I'd rather die knowing I tried. If I get to the end of my life and I think I haven't tried anything, I'd be more disappointed than if I fail a few times. So end of last year, I sat down, I went, what can I do? You know, how do I get out of this rut I'm in? So I emailed a small film festival, independent film festival, asking if I could get experience as a volunteer. And then I also enrolled in a filmmaking foundation course, a 10-week evening course, which I've done both now. So I'm a little bit behind making these videos, but I'm gonna do some further blogs on those. And thank you so much for listening. It's been a lot of talking. I'm hoping some of you will, will stay around to hear more. I just want to talk about how you can try anything, and yeah, hopefully we'll see you for the next one.